tradition on my channel at this point that when we roll out the mid-year freakout tag, we also roll out sadness McBad choices, aka the reason for everything that may have gone wrong in the previous year. But sadly, for sadness, last year she was unveiled as a secret identity. A cover, if you will, for me. But here I thought that unmasking myself like Bruce Wayne at a masquerade party at midnight would somehow alleviate the urge to blame some other unknown entity for all of my poor book choices. But alas, here we find ourselves really just wanting to preface this video with, "It wasn't my fault, Your Honour. I wasn't in my right mind." And welcome back to another video. As I said in the introduction, it is time for the mid-year freakout tag. The tag in which we sum up our reading year so far, talk about some favourites, talk about some least favourites, and offer some predictions for the rest of the year ahead. Where, if you're me, you start to get a little bit squeaky bum hole because you realise that this really is mid-year and all of those numbers are now baked in. What is it the creepy ghost says in the Muppet Christmas Carol? They are what they are and cannot be changed. You know what can be changed though? I can turn the dehumidifier off in the background. Lest you think that I'm filming this on some sort of international space flight. One of these days I shall remember that before I hit record, but not today. But before we launch into a download of all of my life choices, allow me to first introduce you to the partner of today's video, Brilliant. Brilliant is an app that helps you to get smarter every day with thousands of lessons in programming, data analysis, maths, and so much more. If you, like me, have found that your main roadblock to learning the things that you have always wanted to learn is making it fun, then Brilliant is here for you. Every single one of Brilliant's lessons are structured through hands-on problem solving with interactive graphics, ways to win points and complete challenges, and new fresh concepts in almost every lesson that consistently make you feel like you're kind of playing a video game. Except in this video game, the thing that you are leveling up is your knowledge and not, you know, your armor. Brilliant's platform has been uniquely crafted to adapt itself to you while you build problem solving skills and develop a daily habit. And let's face it, the daily habit that we all have right now is doom scrolling, so replacing that with something that's actually productive and makes you feel good at the end of it can only be a win. With content designed by teachers, researchers and professors from Stanford, MIT, Caltech, Google and way more, you can guarantee that not only are you getting up to the minute knowledge and techniques, you are learning from a curriculum developed by people who actually have a passion for teaching you. Whenever I work with Brilliant, I am most excited about the math component because of course for me that's the area that I struggle with, but lots and lots of you have expressed that the thing that you have loved the most is science. Brilliant science course combines that feeling of being like back in the classroom and playing with Bunsen burners with the knowledge that you are getting a better understanding about the world around us and maybe feeling a little bit more in control. Brilliant science course teaches you all about technology through hands-on visual elements. You start with the physical principles of science and move on to develop your own scientific intuition. If you would like to join me on your very own learning journey, then you can try everything that Brilliant has to offer free for a full 30 days by clicking my link down in the description below or scanning my QR code here on screen. And if you like what you see and are desperate to get started, then you can also get 20% off of an annual membership today with my link and my QR code on screen. Join me in becoming a little bit more brilliant today. Let me tell you what's not brilliant though. Not updating your book tracker before filming this video. That's not brilliant. That's gonna cause some problems as we carry on. Oh well, if these aren't the consequences of our own choices. Okay, so if you are brand new here, the mid-year freakout tag has been around for quite a while, and because of that, some of the original questions were just a teeny eensy weensy bit outdated. And so for the past couple of years, I've been using the main framework of the questions while adapting them and adding a few more that were more pertinent to me and to my reading journey. And we're more or less going to carry on with those exact same questions this year. But that does mean that, as always, we have to start with question one, which is, How has your reading year gone so far? And quite honestly guys, if you had asked me this question a couple of weeks ago, I would have said, champion! It is going nae bad. I am in fact slightly smug and a little bit satisfied with this year's reading. But if you ask me that question today, then I will say that somewhere around the end of May, I ended up in the biggest slump that I have been in for years, and I have not yet successfully clawed myself out of it. I'm trying real hard. I'm trying all of the methods that I usually recommend to you guys when you're in a slump. In a sort of like softly catchy monkey, don't really want to say it out loud, touch wood kind of way, I will say that I am currently reading a book which I picked off of my 60% books, which are all of the books that I have purchased in 2025, which wasn't chosen for a few different TBRs, polls and such. It has remained in the back of my brain every single time it hasn't been chosen, and it might be working. But I don't want to say it too loudly or too confidently just in case it, you know, isn't. And let's be real guys, we are living in seriously precedented times at the moment, and being online in any format can be a lot, and that has made choosing things or enjoying things or trying to turn off in any kind of way really difficult. I would say do what I am trying to do, and that's be a little bit kinder to yourself, and don't judge the areas that you might otherwise say you are failing in, because the world is a lot to manage right now. This is ironically the most unspecific way that I have ever answered this question. I've been doing this tag for a lot of years. There are a lot of different iterations of this on my channel, and normally I guess I would mention numbers. So if we are in fact going to do that, then I would say that I'm probably just over 50 books for this year so far, and considering that my goal for the entire year is 105 books, I'm not feeling too badly about that. Albeit, as within the 2 previous years of doing this tag, I will say that my DNF shelf is very healthy. Last year I think I described it as being in like my era of what does not serve you can leave my house. And while I totally agree with past Winnie, current Winnie is just a little bit like, do I even know what I like to read at this point? That said, question 2 on this list is, what is the best book that you have read so far this year? And I have absolutely no hesitation in telling you the title of it, because this book is not only the best book that I have read this year, but one of my absolute new favourites, and that book is The September House by Carissa Orlando, which is a haunted house book. And when I say a twist, I don't just mean like a twist in the story, like a twist in the tale at the end. I mean a twist in the way that a haunted house book is actually presented to us in the first place. For example, one of my favourite haunted house books of recent years has been The Invited by Jennifer McMahon. Every time I say this I get corrected no matter how I say it, so I am now like not confident that I know how this person's name is meant to sound. But either way, this book was a fresh concept of a haunted house because the main character actually built herself a haunted house. She purchased a building and then she filled it with historical timbers and bricks from all around the local area, and by doing so was like unwittingly bringing in haunted disaster pieces into her house. And that was just so cool. You guys know that I love haunted house books. I think if I asked you guys to write down a list of all of Wynn's favourite things, that haunted houses would come out fairly high at the top. And you wouldn't be wrong, but because of that I have obviously read a lot of different iterations of the concept of haunted house, and it's very rare to find a completely fresh take, and The September House is just a completely fresh take. The way that our main character's love for this house turns into something else, something deeper and more complicated, is just so smart. It's so clever, and yet it is so compulsively readable. And what a debut. Like, if this is the early works, I cannot wait to see where we end up in 10 years. Question 3 is, what is the best sequel that you have read so far this year? And I am actually quite proud of myself, because usually I get to this point in the year and this is where I realise that I haven't been progressing with my series tracker goals, that I haven't been reading sequels but have instead been picking up more new books in series. This is usually the point in the year where the panic sets in. This year, however, I am very pleased to be able to tell you that I have been working quite hard on my series tracker stuff, and that I have progressed on with DNF'd a few, and actually finished a couple of series. The biggest win out of all of the sequels that I have read so far this year has definitely got to be reading Nemesis and Sleeping Murder, which are the last two books in the Miss Marple series. I have been talking about finishing the last couple of books in this series for maybe 2 years, and because I have such an attachment to it, and because I just don't want to face a world in which there is no new Miss Marple to read, I have been putting finishing this series off for a ridiculous amount of time. But it's finally done, and I cannot tell you the amount of nostalgia that there was packed into these last two books, and also like how good they were, how good the plot of the last two books were. Plot is not necessarily something that I don't care about in Miss Marple books, but it's certainly not as much of a priority to me as when I'm reading Poirot or other Golden Age crime, where I love the characters but I'm in it for the twisty turns and the like shock reveals. With Miss Marple, I'm much more in it for Miss Marple herself, her view of the world, her view of what it is like to start to age and become slightly invisible, and the privileges that you get from that as opposed to just the torments. I do have a final book which is like Miss Marple's Last Cases, I think. It's a collected short story book which I have kept aside for later on this year when I feel like I need another little boost, but I have finished all of the main novels for it. And something else that I'm just gonna say right here is, while I do not mind the idea of contemporary authors rebooting old series with characters that we have loved, I hate with resounding fiery sun hatred every single reboot of any of Agatha Christie's series. I particularly loathe the Sophie Hannah reboots of the Poirot series. I think they completely missed the charm and the deep backstory that Agatha Christie has built for her characters. They're very paints by numbersy, and I have also felt like that about the collection of Miss Marple stories that came out. Just can't quite tell you how direly bad it was. Not just me being a purist, the reviews for this are scathing. No more adaptations or continuations. I really do appreciate that you guys were like, here, there is new stuff that you can have if you're sad, but no, it just unfortunately makes me sadder. The next question is a new release that you are highly anticipating, and for this one I have an immediate answer again, which again, very unlike me, usually quite dithery, sometimes have more than one answer for this question. But in this case, it is definitely The Listeners by Maggie Stiefvater. This is Maggie Stiefvater's first adult novel. It's a standalone and it's historical fiction. It's a very out there premise for Maggie Stiefvater. It's not one that I would ever have sort of like linked with her. If you'd lined up potential premises in a row, that is not the one that I would have picked. I mean, I know that she does have like a lot of interest in historical bits and pieces, but I did not expect this to be the premise of the first one. I will literally follow Maggie Stiefvater anywhere at this point, and so I am fine with wherever this ends up going. And I thankfully, despite a lot of snafu with my pre-order, did manage to get my signed edition. So this actually exists on my shelves and I could pick it up semi-soon. But I guess the thing is, if I'm in a slump right now, will this help me out of a slump, or will I just ruin this book for myself because I'm in a slump? Decisions. Okay, the next question is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? So still on the subject of brand new shiny books, which is arguably easier for me to talk about right now than the books that I have loved from this year, because my book slump is kind of colouring a lot of things and it's making me feel a little bit unaccomplished when I look back at the list of books that I've read so far this year, which is brains and how they work. Am I right? But for this one, I have a few different answers. Finally, the enthusiasm we have come to expect from a Win video. And as with a usual Win video, my answers are all over the place genre wise. So the first one that I'm really excited for is Don't Let Him In by Lisa Jewell. I think that when it comes to thriller authors who are very consistently producing books year after year right now, that Lisa Jewell is actually one of the only ones who I can rely upon every single time to bring a fresh concept and characters that firmly have me rooting for them no matter what. Also, I have discovered that the narrators for the audiobook of this are going to be Richard Armitage and Anna Is it Anna Fogarty? I always forget. Anna, the maid from Downton Abbey, are going to be the two narrators for this one, and that just makes me very happy. The next one that I'm excited for is another fine mess. This is the sequel to Bless Your Heart. Now, I know that this one is actually already early available on audiobook. I'm not entirely sure why the paperback release and the audiobook release are so out of sync. Usually that happens the other way around, if anything, but I am going to wait until I've actually got the paperback of this in my hands before I consider it to be like a book that I can read. It comes out mid-July, so it's not like we've got a long time to wait. Bless Your Heart, in case you missed me talking about that, was one of my favourite books from last year. It is about several generations of a female family, I guess, who own an undertaker business in America in the South, and it is very the idea of Southern values clashing with a slight supernatural problem which has arisen, and which the women of this family are traditionally the first line of defence for. I will not say anything else. If you want to hear more about it, you can check out my best books of 2024 video, because I raved about it at length, but I am so excited for the sequel. And two other honourable mentions that I am very excited for are two non-fiction books. The first one is What My Father and I Don't Talk About, which is the sequel to What My Mother and I Don't Talk About, which was a collection of essays all by authors, so people that you will know predominantly for their fiction, writing about their very complicated relationships with their mothers, some absent, some abusive, some in their lives but still not effective as mothers, and some people who had wonderful relationships with their mothers but complicated ones. It absolutely blew my mind. It is one of my favourite non-fictions to date, so I am going to stuff it in my eyeballs the minute that it comes in. And then finally there is a book called How to Build a Haunted House, A Cultural Obsession, which is exactly as it sounds. It is a non-fiction investigation into the idea of why we are completely obsessed with haunted houses and continue to reproduce them in literature and in films and in popular media of different kinds. My lovely friend Sarah just sent me this with no other explanation, and I immediately pre-ordered it in like 5 minutes flat. So I'm very, very excited for this. Oh, okay, the next question is my biggest disappointment so far of 2025. And look guys, like I said, my DNF shelf right now is very robust, but I have unfortunately also finished a bunch of books which have been, how does one put it, the subpariest of all subpar. And I think most of you are probably jumping around at your screens right now going, Didion and Babbitts, Didion and Babbitts, because yes, Didion and Babbitts was awful. But in the interest of talking about something else that I read that I hated, so that I'm not just repeating myself and hating on the one book, I will say Rabbit Hole by Kate Brodie. This is the singularly most pointlessly depressing book that I have ever read. This is essentially marketed as a thriller about a girl whose dad has recently unalived himself because he couldn't deal with the weight of the knowledge that they did not know what happened to her younger sister, who went missing when she was in college, I think. And after he's gone, our main character goes to the house to help her mum to sort through things, and discovers that he has been involved in a massive investigation which like takes place on Reddit and other places on the dark web to find out what happened to her sister, and that he was in fact very close to finding out, which means that his death now makes no sense. The actual book is very, very little to do with that for the first entire third of it. Not only that, but this book is written in the most, don't know how to put it, the main character is so clearly so depressed, so terribly chronically depressed, and with absolutely no plans to try and do anything like that, that not only is this book a book that like sucks all of the joy out of the room the second that you read it, but actually was starting to make me a little bit depressed going through it. And that was without any investment in this main character. You know how I say time and time again that even in books in which there are horrific things happening, in which there are like terrifying circumstances and the characters are going through awful things, like Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, for example, where it's just like one horrible thing after another, there are still peaks to that book where the characters are thinking back on better times, where they are desperate to save their sister because they love her, where they're thinking about their childhood together. There's moments of hope. There's also moments of laughter and brevity in it, because you can't just be that consistently depressed for a full narrative, and that's exactly what this book is. And I really should have tapped out after sort of like the first, I don't know, 30 pages, wherein the start of the book is literally just the main character listing all of the horrific and strange, but also not really strange, just kind of like commonplace and unfortunate ways that all of the people in her family have died. Oh, and then there was also animal abuse listed. There was like a decent amount of domestic animal abuse in those first like couple of chapters, and it was not for me at all. I would not recommend under any circumstances, really. The next question is, what is your biggest surprise so far of 2025? And instantly I had an answer for this one also. I in fact do actually have two answers, and I might just like briefly talk about the other one. But the first one that immediately popped to mind was Dinner with Vampires by Bethany Joy Lenz. Bethany Joy Lenz plays Haley on One Tree Hill, which is one of those shows that I just absolutely loved, in the same way that I love Dawson's Creek or Gilmore Girls or a bunch of other kind of like soap opera styly shows that have a coming of age element in them. One Tree Hill is definitely up there with one of my biggest loves, and obviously there have been a lot of scandals that have been reported on in podcast form and various other things over the years about the way that the women on those shows were treated. And so when I picked up Dinner with Vampires, which is subtitled like My Life on a Cult TV Show, that's what I was expecting. I was expecting to hear more about the way that the One Tree Hill set was toxic, because it turns out that Bethany Joy Lenz has a much more complicated story in which she ended up unwittingly involved in a very sinister religious cult. And again, as I say, there's a difference in non-fiction and memoirs between people who have had horrible things happen to them and want to tell you their story, and people who were meant to write a book anyway but have had horrible things happen to them and are now using those skills to tell you their story. And she is definitely on that side of things. This was so compulsively readable. It's one of my favourite books of the year. It is just so good. If you at all have any interest in any of those subject matters, then I think this would be worth picking up. And then as an honourable mention for this, I will also say that I was maybe not surprised, but pleasantly affirmed, I guess, about Nesting by Roisin O'Donnell. I read the synopsis for this way back when it was first announced by the publishers after they had won the bidding on it, so like a really long time before that happens and a book is actually produced and published. And for some reason I didn't pre-order it. I do not know for the life of me why, because I was instantly interested in it. Maybe I was a little bit worried because it was literary fiction, but for whatever reason I didn't do it. And then when it finally came out, I had the weirdest journey going around local bookshops trying to find an undamaged copy of this, because like everything that I found was severely ripped or marked, or the corners were crushed. It was just like really bad. But I finally found one, and I pretty much instantly picked it up because I was like, okay, you've found this coveted book, and I absolutely loved it. It is a literary fiction story about a woman who is living in Ireland with two very small children. All of her family are in England. She only has her husband and his immediate family and a couple of friends there, but not the kind of people who you can sort of like take your kids and turn up on their doorstep and be like, we need somewhere to stay. And she is finding herself in a coercive control relationship. But this is not the first time that this has sort of like settled into her brain, is that this is what's happening to her, that she is being abused. This is, I think, the third time that she's thought about leaving, the second time that she has actually left, but each time has obviously returned, and this is the final time that it is stuck. And it is essentially her journey into rebuilding her life as a person who doesn't work, doesn't have any funds at all, has these two children, and has absolutely no idea how to navigate the system. And it's a sort of look at the inside of the system. Generally something that I would not usually have picked up from the literary fiction side of things. I might have read a memoir of that kind from like the true crime social justice side, but it was one of those where something about it just haunted me until I picked it up, and I'm really glad that I did. The next question is new favourite author that you found in 2025, and look, realistically, Carissa Orlando wins all the awards so far at this point. And when I look back at the books that I've read this year, there are a few authors here and there that stand out, some that I've already talked to you about and some that you've maybe heard me talk about in other places before. But realistically, the author who I am the most excited about so far in 2025, who is not Carissa Orlando, is not a new to me author so much as an author who cemented herself this year as one of my favourites, and that is Ashley Winstead. I am absolutely in love with the way that she writes thrillers. They are one foot in thriller, one foot in that sort of impending doom of horror movies that are set with realistic premises, wherein you know that the things that are happening in them are things that could conceivably happen in the world around you. I love her main characters. They remind me of Gillian Flynn's main characters in Sharp Objects and Dark Places. The kind of very, not even morally grey, but morally tortured, have survived by any means necessary, are not even necessarily people that you could call good people, but that you are desperately invested in anyway, almost because you know that they will do what they have to do in order to survive and get stuff done. And I love that. Gillian Flynn, Ashley Winstead, Jessica Knoll, Eliza Clark, they all have these female characters at the centre of their thrillers who are not fundamentally likeable people, and they don't attempt to present them as that. And honestly, they have kind of revitalised my love of the thriller genre, which I had got to the point of being very over a couple of years ago. More thrillers coming your way here soon, maybe? Next up is a question that I put here a couple of years ago when I was trying to sort of get my feet even when it came to my bingo board from Hell challenge and my 60%, and I was thinking about books that were already on my shelves, TBR veterans that were already there that I could shop, and that is a backlist book that's caught your eye. Now that doesn't just have to exist on your shelves, of course, but for me, I will say that this year around I have far less backlist books hanging out on my bookshelves that I haven't seriously audited. And so I couldn't give you an honest answer for this at this point, because I feel like I have a lot of backlist books which I am holding on to at this point because I have a nostalgia for them, but I'm scared of what happens if I don't have backlist titles on my shelves anymore. What happens if I get to a point where I weed out all of my TBR veterans? Even though theoretically any books that I don't end up reading in a year for my 60% will just end up becoming like backlist books for the next year, that's still going to become less and less the more that I do my 60% challenge and the better I get at it. The next question is favourite genre that you have found in 2025, and I think for me, again, I cyclically go through favourite genres. I will be in more of a fantasy mood or a thriller mood or a horror mood or whatever at different points in my year and even in my week sometimes. But this year has really re-cemented urban fantasy as something that I absolutely adore and that I want to read more of. Books like Bless Your Heart is obviously responsible for that, but this year I also picked up Wish You Weren't Here by Gabby Hutchison Crouch, I hope I got that in the right order, which is about a sort of like ghost hunting family, which is amazing. Wet my whistle again, I guess, for urban fantasy, and made me think about finding more modern urban fantasies, more contemporary urban fantasies, and seeing whether I love the genre as much now as I used to love it way back in the day. Alright, so the last question on this list has been, for the last couple of years, books that you're looking forward to for the second half of the year. But I pretty much have told you all of the books that I am really looking forward to, that are really on my radar, because I very much have pulled back on pre-ordering books. I have been doing really well with being careful about what comes into my house and not just ending up with tons of surprise packages coming in the mail, which is really fun for like a Happy Meal purposes, but it is not fun for my 60% or my trying to work out where they're going to go on my shelves. And so instead of that question, this year I am going to replace it, and I am going to say the next book up that you are most excited about reading. And for me, that is this book the title of which has escaped me, but it is the first in a new series by Karen Slaughter. Now, I have a bit of a turbulent history with Karen Slaughter. She has written 3 of my absolute favourite standalone thrillers of all time. However, I don't get on with the Grant County series, which is a much more crime-based series rather than a thriller-based series, or the Will Trent books, which is not a spin-off, but they intersect the Grant County series. I really don't like either of them, especially from a character perspective. I really think that Karen Slaughter shines the most when she is required to finish off a story in a standalone and give you the full arc in one go, that her pacing and her plotting is the best there. However, she did write a standalone thriller which came out just after the Pepperoni, which she wrote before it and then recalled and rewrote to include the Pepperoni in it, and then published it immediately after the sort of like worst years of the lockdowns were up, and it was awful. Not just the book itself, but also the Pepperoni content in it was just awful, and I kind of just tapped out. I was like, okay, too many books have just now not worked for me. I am going to stop picking up Karen Slaughter books. These 3 thriller standalones are going to be just like some of my peak books in my collection, and I'm just going to have to reread those. But then she brought out this one, which is the start of a new series. So there are so many things that could go wrong with this. But I am nevertheless just intrigued. I am ever hopeful. I am that friend who's just unwilling to completely cut you off after you've done dumb things too many times. I just want her to be good. I just want it to be good. I just want it to be good. I am going to find out because I already own it. I have picked it up. I own it. I am going to find out. And I have the fear. So that is it, guys. That is another year of the mid-year freakout tag over. I don't know how that's happened. I feel like that's part of the mid-year freakout tag where we all just sit there and go, how are we here already? Time do fly. And actually that is a very good point. If you have got all the way through this video, then leave me an emoji down in the comments below which flies. I love giving you guys a category rather than a specific emoji and seeing what you pull out. It is often hilarious. Down in the comments below, please also tell me what has both been your favourite book of the year and is also the next book that is up that you are going to read, because I always love hearing about what you guys are up to. Again, if you have read any books which at all sound like they might be interesting based on the books that I have loved here, then please tell me about those. Do not forget that if you would like to get 30 days off Brilliant for absolute free, then you can do that by clicking my link down in the description below or by scanning my QR code up here, and you can also get yourself 20% off of an annual subscription using either of those methods if you discover that Brilliant is for you. If you are new to my channel and you would like to see how the second half of my 2025 goes, then please hit that subscribe button. And if you are a returning viewer who is delighted by both the joy and salt in this video, then please hit that like button on the way out because it really does help my channel. And I will speak to you guys really soon. Bye!